Well, I have a hat. Just makes my head itch. And I have no gloves.
She has no gloves.
She is a Victorian-era badass who defied social expectations. In this video, we'll be looking at how the Enola Holmes movie used its themes to make it relatable to the audience. Women's education was a conflicted issue in the 19th century. While the age was more open to women achieving academic excellence, there was still a traditionalist notion that women's priorities should be to find a capable husband and dedicate themselves to a lifetime of servitude by virtue of gender roles. Defiance to such notions was considered ridiculous and frowned upon. This makes Enola such a misfit among her peers. To those who are unaware, Enola, whose name is alone spelled backwards, was raised by her equally dissentient mother Eudora, who has striking similarities to real-life women's advocate and suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst. Eudora taught her daughter chemistry, hand-to-hand combat, and detective skills among others. For 16 years, Enola lived snugly inside a bubble of care built by her mother.
My whole world.
Then one day, that bubble suddenly burst when Eudora disappeared. While her brothers are unhelpful, Sherlock being unsympathetic and Mycroft an overbearing conservative.
You have no hope of making a husband in your current state.
I don't want a husband.
And that is another thing you need to have educated out of you.
The feisty girl set out on a hero's journey to find her mother. She, however, encounters a runaway noble, Viscount Tewkesbury, Marquis of Basilweather, or Tewkesbury for short.
The Marquis of Basil.
Tewkesbury was trying to dodge an agent who was sent by his family to track him down and return him home. Enola at first didn't want to get involved, believing Tewkesbury's troubles are none of her problems. She also remembers one of her mother's memorable quotes.
Don't be thrown off course by other people, especially men.
Now, in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, this part is called refusal of call, wherein the hero at first opts to not act on a motivation to cross the threshold, also known as the point of no return. But then, Enola somehow felt guilty towards not acting because she somehow relates to Tewkesbury, who was being forced into a lifetime of conformity, a life someone else chose for him, so she gets involved. However, it was revealed that the man tracking Tewkesbury is actually an assassin sent to kill him. At this point, it is too late for Enola to back out. She got into the mix, which derails her search, but this is actually where her journey begins. There is a certain type of charisma derived from a rebellious attitude. Many of history's greatest figures were actually rebels in their own right. Even in modern times, the public and even media tend to gravitate towards the rebels in their respective fields. Especially if these rebels have a David versus Goliath story of disrupting already established institutions. Such is the case with Enola. All throughout the film, you want to see her succeed, not just because you care for her as a character, but because there is a certain satisfaction to watch her defy the powers that be and give them what they deserve for thinking they get to tell her what to do. Enola is a relatable hero for those who are held down by a culture of restriction and fundamentalism, for those who have no voice but wishes to be heard, and for the powerless who dwell in the shadows of the imperious. The story argues that gender customs of keeping women in line are counter-progressive. It prevents women from having an active participation in the society and robs them of the opportunity to realize their full potential. Equality is the main theme of the story. It was revealed later on that the attempt on Tewkesbury's life was to prevent him from voting for the Reform Bill, which is based on the real-life Representation of the People Act of 1884. It would extend voting rights to more middle-class men residing outside of London.
God help us. There's one thing this country doesn't need. It's more uneducated voters.
However, it still does not give suffrage rights to women. This half-measure policy prompted Enola's mother to act on a shady undertaking which would force those in power to listen. Let's talk about Eudora. We all know that she's the OG badass who raised her daughter in her own likeness and that she went away to execute some world-changing plot. But the question is, why? Well, remember the billiard scene from the film's opening? Mycroft mentioned,
This is my house, not hers, and has been since father died. She asked for 16 years to bring up Enola here. I gave it.
whenever a man dies, his wife is first in line to receive inheritance by virtue of conjugal property. In this story, however, a woman is not entitled to anything, especially an estate this huge. Having entrusted herself to a man, only to be deprived of what is rightfully hers, made Eudora feel betrayed and alone in a male-dominated world. Now, imagine Eudoria's fear when she gave birth to a female child. She has to raise this child in a world which offers no favors for them because they have no participation in nation building. Instead of sulking, Eudora felt motivated. She raised her daughter to be independent, knowing that one day her undertaking might cause her to disappear.
There'll come a time when you have to make a hard choice.
Eudora held a firm belief in her cause in order to make the world a better place for her daughter and the future generations. To do this, she wanted to start by giving women a voice in choosing their leaders.
Because I couldn't bear to have this world be your future.
The corset, a symbol of repression to those who are forced to wear it. But for me, who chooses to wear it, the bust enhancer and the hip regulators will hide the fortune my mother has given me.
Dress is a strong motif for the film, as women are expected to dress and present themselves in a customary way. Deviation from such customs is frowned upon. However, in one instance, these customary clothes did save Enola's life. Interestingly, she did not wear those clothes as form of compliance, but rather for their convenience.
It's lovely.
This particular beat argues that certain sectors, in this case women, can prosper when allowed to decide for themselves and participate. Peel off the layers, and Enola Holmes is about progress versus tradition. It's about the oppressed disrupting the status quo to demand equal recognition and prove their worth.
Because you have no interest in changing a world that suits you.
Now early on we mentioned that helping Tewksbury caused Enola to deviate from her quest, but thankfully she did. In her absolute lowest moment, Enola was sent to Miss Harrison's institution where she was to be broken and become prim and proper. This is a girl who jumped off from a moving train, went toe-to-toe with an assassin, ran from an exploding building, and yet her greatest fear is conformity, being turned into something she's not, and letting others choose for her. Just when Enola was about to lose hope, Tewksbury came to bail her out. The guilt feeling that she had early on came back to serve her this time. With a renewed sense of enthusiasm, she went on to find out who Tewksbury's assassin is. In Blake Snyder's Save the Cat, this part is called Break into Three. The analogy is after surviving the darkest night, the hero re-emerges wiser, stronger, and better prepared to face the challenges of the last part, also known as Act 3.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Towards the last part, it can be argued that Enola might have misinterpreted her mother's intentions for her. She was never really meant to be alone, rather independent. As mentioned earlier, Enola has lived inside a bubble of care built by her mother. She was contented with her own little world, oblivious to the outside. She had no sense of identity and was too dependent on her mother. This is why she felt so alone when Eudora left. She did not just lose a part of her, she lost her entire being. 3 times in the film, we see her attempt to do the corkscrew on obviously more powerful opponents. Her first attempt was on the suffragette Edith, who later on told her,
Be tough. Live the life. But don't do it because you're looking for someone. Do it because you're looking for yourself.
Second attempt also failed, and it almost cost her her life. Then finally, on her third and final attempt, she did manage to pull it off. This successful attempt marks the completion of her personality. To do this, she had to realize who she was, and that is someone who could contribute to making the world a better place. She had to accept her new reality. She might never be able to return to her manor or her mother again. But she would be wise enough to carry Eudoria's teachings as she faced a greater world full of challenges and adventures awaiting her.
My name is Enola, which backwards spells alone. To be a Holmes, you must find your own path.
Thank you for watching my first entry. If there is any character in sci-fi, action, adventure, or fantasy that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments below. Please support this channel by hitting like, share, and subscribe. Till next time.